Hi guys, Horologium here. Today I'm going to be talking about Discord and more Discord's role system and everything. I've had some people talk to me. They've been asking me like, how should you set up roles and stuff. So this is going to be more of like a general guide of how to manage roles a bit better. Hopefully, make them a bit more efficient. This kind of wants you to have some knowledge already of how to set up a server and roles and everything. Just kind of how to manage your roles a bit better, some tips for using them. And so we'll go ahead and just get right off to it. Go ahead and start with setting up roles. Now, when it comes to roles, you don't really need to make a lot. I have an example thing here, and there's quite a bit of roles, and I'll go into those a bit more later. But usually you have your standard tree of roles. You have the members, the moderators, admins, and then server owner. Now, there's also the one called everyone, which is the base role, meaning that's the role that comes with every single server. It's not a deletable role because when everyone joins, they get that role. Now, you can set it up differently, and I might go into that a bit more later. But you always start with an everything role. And then once you select a role, you add a role by going up and hitting the plus button up here. You can change the role name, role color, and then set the different permissions for the roles, such as can they post images, can they talk, can they mention everyone, can everyone mention this role. So you usually just want to go over that and change it as you like. Now, there is a system that I'm not exactly sure a lot of people use, but it would help out very greatly if you were working on a server. And basically what that is it's called channel permissions. And what that is basically each channel, if you go ahead and open the settings, has a permissions tab, which lets you edit permissions for each role, which I honestly prefer making a bunch of roles on your server settings, back in the server settings, and then setting up those roles with just the basic talking and everything. Now, your moderator administrator roles you would obviously set up with manage messages, kick members, ban members respectively. But with channels, you can really customize the experience for non-staff members. So for instance, you could have a channel where you want the main focus to be people showing off the artwork they made or streams they made. You could set up a channel where specific roles are able to post links, basically links to their channels, images, or whatever, and then other people who don't have that role, you can set up by just disallowing, for instance, embedding links, attaching files, etc., like that. And so I use a combination of server settings and per channel settings. It gives you the best versatility. Now, the only thing wrong with per channel settings is it can be quite tedious to manage if you have a bunch of channels, as I do here. Usually you're going through each one, and you have to set the permissions for each one. Now, there is a cool feature Discord added recently. It's called categories, where it basically lets you sort things. And if you right click on categories, you can actually go in and edit category permissions, which is really helpful. And what that does is, instead of going through and editing each channel, you can edit the category permissions, and then when you make a new channel in there, you can sync permissions with that category, and the category is basically like a parent permission system. It will create a child of the permissions and share them with the channel, so that could save you a ton of time if you're using categories. So that's basically all I would suggest for per channel roles. Is you want more of a general server setting wide role setting. For instance, if I go to my moderators here, I have them set up with the basic moderator actions, and you'd want to set this up. You would want to set this up server side, and then per channel is for more of like non-staff, like if you want to be really specific about each channel. So server-wide settings are for a more general approach to the server. If you have a smaller server, it works better. But once you start getting more roles in, or you start getting more members in, I highly recommend you switch to this method. And then the next step I would recommend is there's been something going around more and more where instead of using everyone for people on the server, they have a members role, as I probably mentioned earlier. And what the members role does is it's basically like a general role, you know. So people join your server and be like basically proving you're not a raider or an alt account or something like that, and then they can add you to the members group. And so I've seen some servers set up where you can only access like the rules channel until you like react to it, and a certain bot that gives you the members, and then you can see the whole server, which I haven't actually been able to do yet. I want to do it really soon on this server, but is definitely something I would recommend. The only problem with that is that some bots, for instance, Utilibot and I think Dino, their mute functions don't exactly work with member roles, especially if you set a server-wide member role permissions for talking and etc. Using the mute command won't do anything, but it should be fine if you're just going to straight up kick people instead of muting them. And that's another thing I wanted to talk about. If you do go ahead with this member setting, I do recommend you go and you create a muted role, and basically what that is they can only they either can only read and observe messages, or they cannot talk at all. As you see, I've disallowed everything on here, and that it can go different server per server. Well, the way I did it is I've disallowed everything, and I have a very specific channel on my server where basically only staff and the people who are muted can see it. And the way this works is you go into per channel permissions, as I was talking about earlier. You go to the muted channel, and then you can set it to read, send, embed, and read message history. Now, it gets kind of confusing later on with per channel settings and per server settings, but basically per channel settings will always override per server settings. For instance, if I'm a moderator and I would go to like my media channel and I would disallow even like a higher rank, I could disallow admins from viewing the channel. They can't view it anymore because that channel settings override the server settings. Now, I'm not exactly sure how it works, but I believe the owner of the server has all permissions all the time, so he can't be like blocked from anything. Which of course that makes sense. I'm just saying it's not really possible to block the owner. I don't know why he'd be doing that. So yeah, that's basically how I would set up the muting system if you were using member rules. If you're just using the standard at everyone and you do have a bot like Utilibot or if you do have a bot like Utilibot or Dino that's doing the muting, that's perfectly fine. That will actually work very nicely. I used to use that for quite a while. And so something else I've been seeing in a lot of servers is color roles. And basically what this allows you to do, if we go here, you see I have a bunch of different people set up with a bunch of different colors in their names. And the way that works is instead of creating new roles and new names and everything that stand out from each other, you basically have a list of roles that are literally just colors. And this is actually pretty cool. I recommend you do it. It would add some spice to your server, make it look a bit nicer. But basically how it works is you just have a list of new roles with each color you want, and then you basically disallow everything. This is because the server I have it set up with has the member system, which has the member role. So the member role already allows them to talk. And the color role will work with members. It won't cause them to stop talking. Not just because I have per channel permissions, but as long as they have a role that will allow them to do something, they will be able to do it. For instance, if they were muted but still had the member role, as I was talking about earlier, it wouldn't work because the member role would allow them to still talk. So it is kind of important when you're making color rules to disallow everything, because you don't want to accidentally give someone extra permissions just by giving them a color. But that's basically how color rules work, and it's a fun little feature. It's not really necessary for a server, but it makes it look nicer. And so that's about all the quick tips I had for you. I'll be posting the link to my Discord in the description so you can come and check it out a bit more. You can also go there and ask me questions about role management or anything like that. I'd love to help. And if you're looking for bots for moderation or anything like that, I know some pretty good ones. I mean, you could just Google it, but you could also ask me as well. And I'll see you guys next time.